Good evening and welcome to the Newshour Agenda. I'm Madhavdas G. On the show today, viewers, US President Donald Trump's aggressive foreign policy decisions that have shaken the world. And yet, in another major shift in policy, the United States has engaged in direct negotiations with Hamas, a move that has been seen as unprecedented. The White House has confirmed that the Trump administration has had direct talks with Hamas aimed at releasing hostages. These talks are reported to have been held in Doha in recent weeks. The US has thus far always avoided direct communication with Hamas, designated a terror organization by Washington. Hours after the confirmation from White House, Trump issued a stern warning to Hamas. He wrote on social media, and I'm quoting, "Release all hostages now, not later. Immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over for you." He went on to issue an ultimatum to the Hamas leadership, asking them to leave Gaza while they still have the chance, calling this his last warning. Now, according to Israeli intelligence, Hamas is still holding 59 hostages. However, it's believed that only 22 of those hostages are still alive, including 5 Americans.
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 1, on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
And what really are the implications of this? What does this mean for the Middle East? What does it mean for the United States? Joining us are two very special guests. With us is Gabriel Noronha, who's a former special advisor for Iran at the US State Department, and Under Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, as well as has been the executive director of the Polaris National Security. Let's also, in fact, introduce Mustafa Barghouti, who's a member of the Palestinian Legislative Council. Let me begin first with Gabriel Noronha. Mr. Noronha, how serious is Donald Trump where he says that this is a final warning that's been given? And, you know, for instance, we've seen a statement that's been put out by Hamas saying that we are merely following the terms of the ceasefire agreement that was agreed upon. How would you respond to these sort of statements coming in? Gabriel.
Well, President Trump is right to be threatening this. This is now his third warning that he gave. The first was before the first ceasefire was pledged, and that was actually one of the reasons that led to the first phase of the ceasefire being implemented. But the ceasefire that was agreed to had a provision that said that both parties had to negotiate to get to phase 2 and ultimately phase 3. Phase 1 is pretty much over now. It's already done, and they've just extended it a couple days. And now the question is whether Hamas is willing to be serious about peace, and that requires them releasing Israeli hostages. So now this is the renegotiation for phase 2. President Trump is making it very clear that he's totally fine eliminating Hamas and destroying them entirely. And that's a choice that's up to Hamas, whether they want to play cooperatively or whether they want to go back to war with Israel.
All right. So, Mustafa Barghouti, the view from the United States is that there's been adequate warning given. And given the fact that, you know, the fighting has gone on for a while now, it's over a year, and it's high time that those hostages were returned, and those hostages do include 5 US nationals.
About Palestinian hostages, we have 15,000 of them in Israeli jails. That's the fact that people ignore. Yes, there are 59 Israeli captives, and they should be released and go home safely. But that will happen if Israel accepts to continue the ceasefire. If Netanyahu engages in the war again, these people will die, like the 40 Israelis who were bombarded to death by the Israeli airstrikes. There is one way to end this, which is to end the war. And Israel has violated the ceasefire agreement, the first stage of the ceasefire agreement, 956 times. And it was all recorded, including killing 116 civilian Palestinians during the ceasefire, including rejecting and refusing to implement what they signed on, which is to start negotiations about the second stage on the 16th day of the first stage, which they refrained from up till now. So the problem is not on the Palestinian side. The problem is on Netanyahu's side, on Israel's side. And when President Trump says that it is sick and that people keep dead bodies, I agree with him. But does he know or does he remember that Israel is also withholding 665 Palestinian bodies, dead bodies, including 59 bodies of children.
Okay,
including
let me get
people,
a quick word from Gabriel on that. Gabriel, one of the problems when one takes this kind of an approach is that what's the possibility of Hamas relenting or perhaps even going into a more rigid stance than has been taken. The point is that the ceasefire itself was seen by many as a breakthrough. Now are we risking that ceasefire and those agreements completely being pushed to the back burner if we push any organization either side to taking a very, very rigid stance?
Well, part of the issue here is that Hamas seems to want to have it both ways. They want to be able to have fought a war, lost it completely, and they still want to continue fighting and making these absurd spectacles when they parade the hostages and coffins of dead babies around. And so they're trying to say, we want to still be able to rule Gaza. We still want to conduct more October 7th. And at the same time, they're claiming they want a ceasefire. These are entirely contradictory things. And so for the Israelis and as well as the United States, they've come to the conclusion that there's no alternative other than the destruction of Hamas. And Hamas can go either quietly in exile or they can go the hard way, which is by opening a war. One thing that I'm hearing from all my Arab diplomat friends and colleagues is they say they are not going to spend any money going to reconstruct Gaza if Hamas is still there, because they know that Hamas will just start another war and the cycle of violence will continue and all those billions of dollars of money will be wasted. So again, the question is, are they willing to accept that they've lost and are they going to find a way through it, or are they trying to continue to deny reality by just trying to leverage these hostages even further?
Right. Mustafa Barghouti, that's a very, very big question indeed. An emergency sum of $53 billion that the Arab League, and in fact was there the Egyptian plan for Gaza's reconstruction as part of a comprehensive Arab strategy. Now, on the one hand, you have, of course, the concerns that Gabriel has expressed, and you also have the United States, which has threatened to build a sort of Riviera over there. In the midst of all this, if the violence continues, if Hamas continues to stick to its guns, clearly we could be looking at very, very dire consequences for whoever is there in Gaza, judging by what President Trump is saying.
Well, unfortunately, your American guest is not telling the truth. I have to say that. He keeps saying that Hamas wants to fight. Hamas doesn't want to fight. It's Israel who wants to fight. It's Israel that declares every morning that they want to reactivate the genocide they conducted in Gaza, which has already killed 50,000 Palestinians. And don't tell me that these figures are not correct. This is what the United Nations itself have approved. 50,000 Palestinians killed, including 17,000 children. Most of the people killed are civilians, women and children. This is the reality. This is the truth. But the American side sees only what Israel says. It's a very strange situation. Hamas doesn't want even to stay in ruling Gaza. They told us frankly and openly in the meeting of all Palestinian groups that they are ready not to be in the government, not to be the government of Gaza, but there has to be a Palestinian government that is accepted by everybody. And there was a proposal that was approved by all Palestinian parties in Beijing, which would have solved the problem completely. A Palestinian independent government accepted by everybody, national consensus government, that will not only be ruling Gaza, but also the West Bank. But no, the Israeli side and the American side want to separate Gaza from West Bank. Why? Because they don't want to allow the establishment of a free Palestinian state.
But but the point is, sir, you say that Hamas is for peace, but who launched the attack on October 7th that led to the escalation of the crisis in the first place? It's a very strange way of supporting peace when you have hundreds of people, if not thousands, launching an attack on any part of the world. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's Israel and Hamas. When anywhere there is such a massive attack, that certainly does not seem to be the sign of any organization that wants peace.
Unfortunately, you are also adopting the Israeli view, because the big question here is the 7th of October the beginning or a result of the beginning. The beginning was in 1948 when Israel displaced 70% of the Palestinian people from their country, destroying 521 Palestinian communities to the ground. 70% of the population of Gaza are refugees. And then Israel occupied Gaza for 57 years. and then it put Gaza under terrible siege. And Israel conducted 4 wars on Gaza before the 7th of October. And they were conducting another war. They are now conducting a war in the West Bank where Hamas is not running the show. Why are they attacking us?
Well, all I will say
Bank?
is that certainly while there are certain questions about the manner in which Israel has carried out its attacks, the fact is, sir, that before the 7th of October, the Abraham Accords were very much in place and there was peace on ground. Gabriel Narona, quick chance to rebut what's being stated here by Mr. Barghouti. Yes. Just quick rebuttal from Mr. Narona, sir, before I come back to you. Yeah, Gabriel.
Well, look, both sides have, over the last 80 years, yes, there's been violence from both sides. But that's the past. The question was, which group is working towards peace? Which group wants to live in peace with their neighbors?
Israel.
The Israelis want to live in peace with their neighbors. That's what they've sought. That's what they had in October 6th.
Why are they occupying us?
And again, Hamas started this, an unprovoked, savage attack, burning women and children alive. And I have to correct the gentleman's figures. He's entitled to his opinions, but not his facts. The United Nations has not put out any statement about Palestinians. They have simply quoted the Hamas authorities' figures, which are almost entirely fabricated. They don't talk about the tens of thousands of Hamas fighters and terrorists who have been killed. The Hamas ministries don't want to put those numbers out. So again, there's a lot of propaganda here. But the question is really who is willing to live at peace, and Hamas has refused to acknowledge the existence of the Israeli state. They refuse to even accept a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution, one without any Jews.
All right, we'll have to wrap it up there, and certainly, of course, U.S. breaking its long-standing diplomatic protocol of not engaging with terror groups in this particular instance. What does this mean? Is it going to break with other protocols as well? Many questions indeed. I'd like to thank both of you, Mustafa Barghouti as well as Gabriel Narona, for joining us this evening and breaking that down. Certainly, all eyes are on the Middle East and what will transpire from here on, even as Europe itself continues to remain tense in terms of what will be the final outcome there between Ukraine and Russia. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, gentlemen.